Continuing the word test, we're now up to question F. We're going to insert a picture of a preacher. We're going to go to the paragraph that begins, "Our objective is not to preach," and right over here, hugging the right-hand side of the paragraph, I'm going to put a little picture of a preacher. So the way we'll do that is, because it says, "Do a clip art search for preacher and insert the picture by the paragraph which begins, 'Our objective is not to preach.' Format the picture layout to have square wrapping style and right horizontal alignment." So we want it to not be inline style, but we want to have a nice square over here with it wrapping around on this right hand side. So that's what we're going to do. We'll choose insert, picture, clip art. It'll bring up this task pane over here. We're going to search for preacher. It's searching. We'll wait. And then I'm going to actually scroll down a bit. I want to choose this particular preacher. I will click on this and drag it over to some place within the paragraph. We could get it exact a little bit later. And now the first thing I'm going to do is just resize it a little bit to shrink it to an appropriate size. Okay, so now what I would like to do is, actually this markup is getting in the way, so I'm just going to change it to regular final instead of final showing markup. So now we have this picture here. I'm going to right click on the picture and click on format picture. And I would specifically like to format the layout of the picture. I'm going to click on the layout tab. I want to have square wrapping style with right horizontal alignment. I could do more advanced things, but I'm not in the mood to right now, and that's not what the question asks. I'll say OK. And now I'll just move it up a little bit, and here we have a nice square alignment, a square wrapping style, and right alignment. And it says our objective is not to preach, with a nice picture of a preacher here. So that was question F. Question D is go to the paragraph that talks about the office CD and change it so that we'll turn off widow and orphan protection. Just to show you with widow and orphan protection present, I'm just going to delete this line in between, and you see over here it brings everything onto one line, and I press enter, it skips one line over here. You see, really could have one extra line over here, but instead they move this line over here, this line which otherwise would be on page 1, they move it to page 2 so that the word request is not by itself. We want to turn off widow and orphan protection, which will leave the word request at the beginning of the second page. To do that, you click anywhere in the paragraph, you choose Format Paragraph, and then on the Line and Page Breaks tab, we'll clear the checkbox for widow and orphan control, and we'll say OK. And as you see, now request is on a line all by itself at the beginning of the next page. So we've turned off widow and orphan protection. Let's turn off this task pane over here. See here we have the word request on the beginning of the next page. This actually, it depends on the size of this preacher that you inserted here. This happened to work out perfectly so that we could demonstrate widow and orphan protection. If it doesn't happen to do that when you practice, it doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It could just be that's the way that it happened to be formatted. You're not going to notice any difference, but you'll still be able to tell because when you go back to check it, you'll see that widow and orphan protection has been turned off. Let's just go back to final showing markup for a second. If you look right over here, it says formatted, no widow orphan control. So that was something that's been added to this particular paragraph. Okay, so let's turn back to final, just to get the process of working. Okay, so that was question G. Now we're up to question H. At the bottom of the document, create a table, 2 rows and 3 columns. In the first row, type the words name, age, and social security number. In the second row, put your name and makeup and age and social security number. Then we're going to use borders and shading formatting to shade it at 20%. we're going to make a nice fancy table at the bottom of the document. So you press page down until you're at the end, or Control End to go to the end of the document. You choose to Table, Insert Table. It's going to prompt you for the number of columns. That's 3. The number of rows is 2. That's fine. We'll say OK. So now we have a nice table. You're going to type here name, age, and SSN. For name, I'm going to put Josh. For age, I'll make up an age. For social security number, I'm going to make up a social security number. I might want to resize it just so that it's all in one line, but I don't really need to. So I just made up all of this information, and now I'd like to format it to have a little bit of shading. And we'll do that. We could just click on the Format tab, Format menu, choose Borders and Shading, and go to the Shading tab of the Borders and Shadings dialog box. And where it says here Patterns, you change the style from Clear to 20% shading, and we'll say OK. And here we have a nicely shaded table. And if you looked at Final Showing Markup, it would say Formatted Table here. Okay, so that was question H. Question I, insert a page number on the inside top of the page. And we're going to use uppercase Roman numerals. Okay, so we'll go here on the first section. See, it says section 1. And we'll choose Insert, Reference, not a reference. We want to insert page numbers. We want it to be on the top of the page, and alignment is going to be on the inside of the page. That means it's going to be on, if you have 2 pages side by side in a book form, it's going to be on the inside part. And then that would be the beginning part of it. We could just say OK, but then you only get partial credit. We're also going to click on this Format ... button and change the number format from 1, 2, 3 to be Roman numerals I, and III, etc. And then we'll say OK and OK. And then we have Roman numeral I over here, and if you scroll to the next page, this is how you see we have a 2. It should actually be a Roman numeral II for 2, but this is one of the problems. It appears to be a bug, in my opinion, in the way that Word handles it. In that, in terms of the position, in terms of whether it's on the, see, it actually is on the inside of the page, and it also is on the top. But in terms of the numbering, somehow a section break will make it revert to the old type. So this is actually fine. We could have probably gotten around it by having inserted these page numbers before we began the second section. Remember, the second section is because this masthead here is section 1, and then the 2 columns become section 2. So that break kind of changed that particular setting. We could always go to the second section, choose Insert Page Numbers again, and choose Top of Page, inside, choose the format, and make it all these Roman numerals, and say OK, and then it becomes exactly what we want. But if you don't happen to do it on the test, I'm not going to penalize you. Okay, so that's question I. Question J, insert an automatically updating date and time in the footer. So this is going to use view header and footer, and is also going to be the insert date and time, or actually just insert date. We'll actually see that there are extra things that we're going to want to insert. So I don't actually only ask you to insert an automatically updating date. I'm also going to ask you to insert an automatically updating time in that footer, as well as a file name and path. So let's do this. We say view, header and footer. View, header and footer. That'll bring us to the header, but we could just go to the footer. And in the footer, we could then say, for example, insert date and time. Make sure that this checkbox is checked, this update automatically, and we choose from the available format. So we say OK. So now we have and automatically updating date. How do we know it's automatically updated? Well, if it's not automatically updated, it would just put it in as plain text. If you hold down on the Alt key and press F9, you'll see that behind the scenes it's taking the date, meaning today's date, and formatting it in this specific format. Press Alt F9 to change back. So that is the date. So it's actually within the header and footer. When you're editing it, this little toolbar comes up, and you could have just clicked on this button to insert a date. See, this is like little pages of the calendar. Right next to it, we're going to insert a time. So I'm going to click on that to insert a time. So here we have the time. And we can also, I'll press space, and we want to insert some auto text. Namely, I would like to insert the file name and path. And then it's going to automatically pick it up. If I save it as a different name, it'll change that name. But that's what we want. I actually wanted to save it as Chapter 7 Case Study Ethics and Society Solution. So we'll see if it changes it when we save it. So that's the end of this particular question J. So we're going to click on Close. Let me actually just try to save it. Right now it just says society.doc. Let's choose File, Save As, Ethics and Society Solution .doc. And does it actually change it? No, it just says Ethics and Society. So it doesn't appear to be an automatically updating path, or actually file name. Because probably we could get rid of it now if we wanted to. It wouldn't require that you do it. In fact, you should really, it wouldn't be a problem for you, because the first step that I actually ask you to do is to save it as the solution file. But here we go. Now we have the word solution in there. And now we close it. So now we have a nice footer. That was question I. Now question K is the mail merge, and even though this really isn't a letter to send to anybody, we're going to pretend that it is a letter. So we're going to just put a little greeting line, Dear Mr. Randall, or something of that sort at the beginning of it. And we'll go through a mail merge, and that's question K. Pretend this is actually a letter, perform a mail merge, making up 3 people to send to, add a greeting line at the beginning of the first paragraph, and if you do this step, make sure to send me the resulting merge document as well as this original solution file. So to do that, we'll just go to, it doesn't matter where we are, we'll choose Tools, Letters and Mailings, Mail Merge. Select document type, it's a letter, so we're just going to click on Next, Starting Document. There's nothing to change here. How do you want to set up your letters? Use the current documents. I'm not going to click on anything. I'm just going to go skip. This is step 2. We're finished with step 2. We're just going to click on Next, Select Recipients to bring us to step 3. Now, select recipients. You could use an existing list, and in fact I've done mail merges on this computer, so it might be easier to do it. But assuming that you don't happen to have one on your computer, I'm going to say type a new list, and then I'll click on Create. No customization in this case. I'm just going to make up 3 names. Mr. Joshua Mouse. New entry. Miss Sally Struthers. New entry. Mr. Paul Revere. And that's 3 entries is good enough for me. I'll say close. I don't need to customize it. I'll give myself a file name. I'll call it josh.mdb. That'll be fine. I don't really care. These are 3 people. I'm going to say OK to accept them. And so now it says office address list in josh.mdb, and I'm going to use that existing list. I changed from type a new list to use an existing list. So that's just really the first step of the mail merge where we've actually done anything. We're going to go now to step 4. So step 3 is complete. Next, write your letter. So here's where we get to insert various things. So I'll go to where we have ethics, press enter twice, and go back up. I'll insert a greeting line, and I could choose different types. I'm just going to choose Dear Mr. Randall, and we'll say OK. And we now inserted this greeting line. So now, step 4 is preview your letters. Here you see it has Dear Mr. Mouse, and you could use the arrow keys to go between different recipients. You click on these little icons here to go between the 3 different recipients that we have. But you don't really need to do anything at this step. We could be confident that we did it correctly beforehand. So we'll just go down to complete the merge. And we'll choose edit individual letters. We'll merge all records. We'll say OK. It's going to create letters 1, and you would just save this file, save as, and you could call it ethics and other issues.doc, or you could call it mail merge .doc, and then you make sure to send me those files. So that's the end of the test. Now, you might not know where these files are in order to send them to me. So there's two ways to find out, by the way. This is not on the test, but if you can call me over to help you find them. But there's two ways of finding out where these files are. One way is you right-click someplace on on this empty toolbar area, and you make sure to show the web toolbar. Here's the web toolbar, and part of the web toolbar, it shows you the full path of the document. So you have c:/exploringword/mailmerge.doc, and if you looked at this other one, this Chapter 7 case study, we could also look at the web bar and we'd have the same thing there. Alternatively, you can, you see here it's still, even though it's mailmerge.doc, we have here exploring Word, etc. as part of the text within here, but at the very least the folder is there, and then you could just base yourself on the folder when finding the file to email me. The other thing that you can do, let's get rid of this web toolbar, you can click on File, Properties, and then you have a whole bunch of different properties, like the author, the company, the title, various general properties. So one of the properties, if you go to the General tab, is the location. And this location is, if it's going to be in some kind of temporary folder, it might be a very long folder name, in which case it would kind of go off to the side, but it doesn't matter. You could still click on the location, highlight it, then you could press Control-C to copy it, and after pressing Control-C to copy, you could then Control-V anywhere to paste it. So you start run, you open up that particular folder, and then you'll have access to those the files in that folder. Okay, so that's the test. The test is in about a week and a half, and the actual test will be fairly similar to this. So now you know what to do. Let's stop this. We'll see you next class.